Hello and welcome to the Browns Blitz. Today is Wednesday, July 17th, and this is episode number 56. I'm your host, Rod Bluhm, and with me today are several guests. We have a great show planned for you today. First of all, I'm going to bring in my brother, Jeff. Just say hi, and how are things going for you, Jeff?
Well, going about as well as can be expected. Rod, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. No complaints right now. Working at home and haven't been getting outside much, but what can I say? No complaints. Also, fortunate to have with us making his debut on my podcast, Slimdog. Slim, it is a pleasure to finally have you on the show. How are you?
Good, good. How are you, Rod? Hello, Jeff. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to the Browns Blitz. And I hope we were able to have a great discussion and learn some things and see get some great views.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on. And last but certainly not least, Duane Evans. Duane, how are things going for you this evening?
Can't complain at all. Working on school. Just finished a long day at work, but life is life. We got to keep moving.
That's right. That's right. It doesn't stop. We all kind of put in our hours, and yeah. I think it was a long day for me too, and but I've been looking forward to talking to all you guys. So we're gonna get this rolling. We've been talking about this show for a couple of weeks, and we're really going to talk about. I was trying to think. There's really a lot going on, and to me, this what we're really talking about is racism in America, and there's so many subtopics to this, guys. So many. We could probably talk for 8 hours. Going over everything. But I really want to try to cover the things that we feel are key tonight and the time we have. And I really feel like racism is what this boils down to. And the killing of George Floyd on May 25th was really a catalyst for a lot of things to happen for protests, and we're hoping for progress and eventually equality. So I think we have a great panel here. Great guests, different experiences, and we're going to start out. First of all, I think we're going to discuss I want to go through this kind of by giving our experiences and our thoughts, and not so much just talking about what's in the news and, saying the same mantras and everything that we hear all the time. So, what I thought we would start by doing is just kind of each of us taking a few minutes and giving a little bit of a history of ourselves as far as in our lives, our experiences with dealing our history. I shouldn't say dealing with, just our experiences with people of different ethnicities and how that was for us, maybe growing up, maybe every day, because we know that some people, just by where they were born, where they live. Some people it's common for them to be around a lot of people of different ethnicities, and some people it's not. So I thought first of all we would kind of go through that. So Jeff, I introduced you first. Why don't you kick us off?
Sure. Well, I just want to start off by saying, guys, that I'm very proud of my younger brother for taking this project on tonight. I know that this is well outside of his comfort zone. Rod, if anybody that follows him or knows him um, is well aware of how much he tries to distance himself from anything political or controversial. Probably why he has such a strong following on Twitter. But this is such an important topic, and it relates to all of us as sports fans, as human beings, and none of us really has the full picture. So I think my takeaway in everything that's gone on over the last few weeks is one side of that perspective, and hopefully all of us talking together can start a dialogue that moves us into a positive direction. I think 4 years ago, I just kind of threw my hands up in the air with the conversation about Colin Kaepernick. I got tired of trying to discuss the topic with friends and family members on Facebook. There was a lot of false narratives. There were people just sort of set in their ways and not willing to listen to why what he was doing was necessary. And we all kind of fell victim to pointing fingers at each other about this and that. And my takeaway by looking at that a little bit closer over the last few weeks was when Nate Boyer and Colin Kaepernick spoke about what he should be doing to protest. That dialogue was probably the most important thing. The fact that, they both had important views, they both had strong opinions on things, but they were able to share those views with each other and come out of the other side with sort of a consensus on a go-forward plan. None of us can fix all this, but by talking it through, we can at least have a better understanding of each other, where we come from, and hopefully start in a positive direction. So anyway, long preamble. Sorry about that. My experience. Yeah, my experience. Back to the question. Rod and I were talking about this the other day. We grew up in a predominantly Italian Catholic neighborhood. Actually, two neighborhoods we grew up in were predominantly Italian Catholic neighborhoods. We were the Protestant kids. All that really meant to us was, we knew that on, I think it was Friday night, there was nobody to play with because all the other kids went to CCD. So that, from that perspective, you start to recognize that people have differences in how they live their life. My earliest exposure probably to different races and so forth was when we were living on the east side. Next door neighbors sold their house to their cousins. Their cousins moved in. Their son became one of my best friends, but they had moved out from, I want to say, Cleveland Heights or someplace further in. And, the conversation was about, well, we had to get out of that neighborhood because it was going black. It's an uncomfortable thing to talk about now, but the reality is that back in the 60s, there was redlining. There was all kinds of things going on with real estate and how people were selling their houses, how they were excluding certain buyers, how certain people were being limited to certain neighborhoods. And essentially, the white flight that took place during that time period was my first exposure. I really had never met a person of color prior to that. Again, surrounded by a bunch of Catholic kids, and didn't really know much about it. So obviously, that's a negative first impression. And then everything from there forward in my life built on that impression, probably until the time I went to college. Rod and I went to Solon High School. I think it was pretty white at that point.
99%. Probably.
Yeah. I mean, really, we weren't exposed to. I mean, there might have been a couple of Asian kids or something, but that was it. And
Right.
I went to Cuyahoga Community College after high school. Did my first 2 years at the Eastern Campus, and it was very racially integrated. Not only that, I mean, we had older people, going back for classes. I mean, it was completely different from my experience in high school. So I got to meet a lot of different people who were pursuing an education. And I'll just share one quick story about a guy I met at Tri-C Eastern Campus, and it was in my sophomore year. I was a commuter. Everybody was a commuter. We drove our cars in. We parked in the parking lot. We walked into class together. I had a Pontiac at that point in time, and there was another guy named Pete Adams who had a Pontiac. And, we were both Pontiac guys. And it's like, that started the conversation, right? Hey, I like your Pontiac. Okay. Well, we got to be study partners and friends eventually through that 1 year of sharing a bunch of classes. The thing that stands out the most in my memory of Pete Adams was when we used to have lunch together in the cafeteria on campus. And there were obviously a lot of different groups, and I didn't really know a heck of a lot of people at Tri-C, but Pete knew me, I knew him. We had lunch together, and before we did our next class, and people would kind of look funny at us because I'm this white kid from the suburbs. He's this black guy from the inner city, and eventually, he just got kind of tired of it, and he would call some guys out and say, "What's your problem?" And they say, "Why are you hanging out with that white kid?" Blah 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 blah. And he looked at me and he looked at them, and there was a napkin holder on the table. In the cafeteria, there are these like dispensers, right? And he pointed at the napkin holder dispenser and he said, "That's black." Pointed right at it. He said, "That's black." And then he pointed at the napkin and he said, "That's white." He said, "Jeff and I, we're not either one of those. So why is this a problem?" And that has resonated with me for 40 years. It's, maybe it's an oversimplification, but the reality is that we're more alike than we are different. And the really only the regret I have is that after our sophomore year, I went to Kent. Pete went down to Central State. We kind of lost touch. Back in those days, there was no social media. There weren't cell phones. So we couldn't stay in touch. I really didn't know much about Pete for a while until I read an article in the Plain Dealer a couple of years later that unfortunately he had been stabbed to death. And again, it just kind of made me feel like, geez, I wish that he and I could have stayed on the same path. My life went one way, his life, unfortunately, went another way. And I think that's a reflection of what we're talking about tonight, that, I had every opportunity in the world to be successful. And for him, it was a daily fight. And he ended up losing that fight. So that's my personal experience, at least part of it. That's an oversimplification again, but that's kind of the perspective I come at this with. And I hope that by having this conversation, engaging with everybody, that we can share that message with other people and hopefully all can benefit from it.
Thanks, Jeff. Slim?
Yeah, good stuff. Great story, Jeff. First of all, Rod, I want to thank you for doing this podcast. It's amazing what Brown's Twitter has done as far as this concerned. There's so many people out there that want to discuss this, and it makes me very proud to have people such as you and the ladies of That's What B Said, Kevin and their staff of Voice of the Land, Always Positive J, David Big Play. All of these people are turning around and they want to talk about this. They want to learn about the experiences. They want to share. People like me, people like Duane, people like Jeff, people like you, Rod, your experiences with racism. So I just want to let you know, first off, that this is a beautiful, beautiful thing that you're doing. And I'm just so proud that people are really starting to talk about this. So I just want to say that first before I get into my my little story. But I live in Colorado Springs now, but I was born and raised in Akron, Ohio. Catholic, went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. I'm the oldest of three kids. My dad was a Summit County deputy sheriff, and he was one from 1963. He was hired as a sheriff at 22 years of age in 1963 until 1984 when they moved out here to Colorado Springs. And so I came from pretty middle class upbringing. My mom worked at the Akron AAA. She worked at the library when I was little. So it was a very diverse, back in the day, when I was going to school in the 70s, there weren't too many African American Catholics, so in my class, there would be three, pretty much. It was basically two of us, I think, pretty much after that. But other than that, the community was great. Lived in a mixed neighborhood, pretty mixed neighborhood. So there was all races in my neighborhood. My dad worked a lot in the community as a deputy. He would come and show off the cruiser, talk about his job and what he does. What he does. Also, in high school, he would volunteer to patrol games. Things like he was a very visible fixture, and so everybody knew my dad. Families would actually turn around and their kids would get in trouble. They'd bring them to our house, and I would see my dad talk to these kids about going down the wrong path. My dad literally turned around and took me and my brother down to the jail where he was working and actually put us in a jail cell, and told us right offhand, if you do bad things, this will happen to you, and I'm not going to come and get you. So it was very diverse. We weren't treated any differently because of my dad. As far as the races didn't start seeing that until maybe I was in high school a little bit, not blatant, but we had our groups, we all sat at different parts of the cafeteria and stuff like that, but as far as me personally, as far as blatant racism, it really wasn't there. Our neighborhood, Basically, that's what it was. The white family across the street from us, the Boydos, they had my parents' permission to beat our behinds if they saw us doing bad. The same with their kids. It was pretty much a community that I grew up in Ohio, and I think maybe because of the fad sheriff, and he was very visible, that may have played into a part where I may not have seen it as much. You know what I'm saying? Because of my father and his stature in the community. But it was there, but maybe a fight or two, in high school, to the point where my dad had to pull both my brother and I aside and said, "You can't fight every time somebody calls you the N-word. You can't fight every time. Sometimes it's better to be a man and walk away." And I realized in some accounts, me and my brother, along with many African Americans, got told how to act around cops, how to be, or especially white cops. I hate to say that, but that's what, my dad was a cop and he told us that. And I think those were some of the first lessons that my brother and I got about racism and, and how we're going to be treated maybe differently than the average person. So a lot of my lessons I got from my father and my mother, growing up as him being an officer of the law, and working in the community.
Thanks, Slim. I'm gonna turn it over to you, Duane. We'd like to hear your experience.
Okay, well, my experience is a little bit different from yours.
Yeah.
Let me preface this by this. I grew up in a military family. I'm like the fifth or sixth generation of family members to go into the military. Like my grandfather, well, both my grandfathers, both my parents, I got a host of uncles, aunts. My brother went to the Air Force. My sister went to the Air Force. I went to the Army. My nephew and my little brother went to the Marine Corps. So it's like that's been our family. So for us is like I'll say it like this. I seen a quote the other day. The only color that we saw as far as racism was the green. That was the uniform that the person next person to us wore. But when I was younger, like when my mom was in the military, we were living in Fort Hood, Texas, and I just turned 40 this year. I think I was about 5, and this little girl said to me, we was out there on the playground, and I quote, "God didn't love you enough to turn you white. That's why He left you black." I never forget it to this day. Like I said, I just turned 40 this year, and I didn't really know how to react. I really still don't. I like to be that young to say something like that. Again, I understand. Again, growing up in the family that I grew up in, that racism is not a born trait. That's something that has to be taught. People are taught to hate. When you're first born, you see kids in daycare, they play with anybody until they're taught differently. We grew up watching shows like Family Matters and A Different World and stuff like that. We saw they talked about racism and stuff like that on different shows like that. So me growing up in the inner city, I grew up in East Cleveland. I'm the third generation to graduate from Shaw High School. Like we didn't have a lot of racism amongst each other. We grew up. It was, hey, you cool with me? I'm cool with you. Okay, we friends, and that's that. I have two brothers and a sister that are half white. So again, I can never be racist. That's just my family is half and half. So like, it's weird for me to see people who who are like, I don't hate you because of the color of your skin. But what does that mean? I don't understand that. That concept is foreign to me. It just doesn't make sense. To me, like I said, growing up in a family of military and brotherhood and unity, and we got each other's back, no matter what you wear, or what the color of your skin, or your background, or your religious history. Hey, when you put on a uniform, you just like me. So I got your back, you got my back, and when we go across these waters, and we fighting against, terrorism and Al Qaeda and whoever else, then so I know I can trust you, and you can trust me. It's not about, okay, I'm gonna go over here, and because I'm black and you white, I gotta worry about you shooting me in the back. I never had that issue.
Right.
So for me, like I said, certain parts of the stuff that's going on it's a little foreign to me, as far as, like I said, how people act, like I said, racism. I understand. I try to be open-minded and understand people's views on how they were raised. Because again, like I said, racism is something that I feel that has to be taught. If you never teach a kid to hate, then they don't. They'll grow into learn their own likes and dislikes of stuff on their own versus being taught that way. Like my daughter has what's called as my wife said, discernment. She can tell like a vibe off people, how if it's a good person or not. But if generally they're a good person, no matter if they're black, white, Asian, Hispanic, she goes up to them and gives them a hug all the time. That's just who she is. Because I don't teach my daughter to don't talk to the person because of this. Don't talk to the person because of that. If we were taught never to, if we actually followed that one rule we were taught when we were younger, don't talk to strangers, we would never have friends. We wouldn't be on this phone call right now.
You're right.
We would never meet people. We would never get to experience or understand different things in life.
Right.
Yeah. Great points, Duane.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, hey, Duane, I'm just like you. My family is very racially diverse. I have white cousins. I got half white cousins. Our family was taught to love, people of all races, all colors. So I'm like you, where I am seeing this happen, and I see the racism and stuff. It hurts because I wasn't taught to hate any race.
Right.
I wasn't taught that. I have family back in Akron. I have white families that I call their parents my parents. They help make me into the person that I am today. And I am proud to call them my second mom and dad. I put them on Facebook. This is my second mom and dad. I'm not afraid to do that because we were always taught to welcome in everybody as family into your home. As long as you get the respect, you give that respect. So, I'm like you. It's very, very difficult right now for me to see the racism that's going on because we weren't taught to hate, we weren't taught that.
Right. And like I said, for me is the hardest part of stuff going on for me right now is trying to explain to my daughter, who pretty much loves everything and everybody and just happy-go-lucky general person, explain to her, why I participate in, protest marches, or why I'm, putting together a peace summit, or why why we're doing this, that, and the other. And, I'm not letting her watch the news, and, because all the stuff is going on. I try to shield her as much as possible, but at the same time, I try to keep her, to have her innocence. My son, on the other hand, who's 15, it's a different story. In a couple of years, he's going to be out in this world. I have to try to teach him and prepare him in a different way. Right. And it's painful. It's scary to even have to have that conversation with him. Like, hey, like you said, when it comes to certain people, and when you have to act this way, or don't do this, and like my wife and her mom and her aunts, and said they work for the police. So I try to, bring them around them, and it's still like, you still feel uneasy. Again, just growing up in the neighborhood that we are in, and it still feels uneasy at times. And it's not about it. And let me be clear, it's not about if they're black cops or white cops or Hispanic cops. It's just police in general. As you've seen from, like you said, the George Floyd thing, it wasn't just all white cops. So it's not about just racism. This is a issue of right versus right, wrong versus wrong, and this is just wrong.
Yeah, I think we can. Yeah, I think we all agree. We all agree. I want to. I'm already going away from my outline, guys.
I'm sorry, my bad.
Sorry, we didn't.
No, I'm saying I'm already changing my outline. Okay, I want to know from each of you guys, briefly, why. And I don't want to diminish this death or anything else, but there have been a lot of deaths, killings at the hands of police. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this happening upon the death of George Floyd? Why are people reacting differently? Why are so many more people vested in this?
I'll take a stab at that question. So I grew up in a place of and let me choose my words correctly and let me speak slowly. I have a speech impediment at times. So for me to speak publicly at times was a issue. So I went from not speaking at all, staying in the background, to actually preaching in a pulpit at one point. My first message was you having to live in faith, not in fear. I believe that what's different now versus, say, Trayvon or Tamir Rice or something like that is this was like the final straw. And even with his death, it's still been like 3 other people who got killed within that's kind of been like swept under the rug because so much other stuff has been going on. Mm-hmm. Since that time. We're like, this is like the past like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So like I said, people are at their breaking point. Like I told somebody before, yes, I was in the process with Tamir Rice. Again, I have a son. I live in Cleveland. I have a son the same age. I cannot see my son playing outside in the park and a cop just rolled up and just shoot him without asking questions, without saying 2 words, without saying, hey, stop this and other. And then the next post you see, or the news thing that comes up is, hey, this person of non-color, he grabbed the cop's taser and he got tased, and he didn't get shot to death. But this kid was just playing in the park, playing cops and robbers, or just playing with a toy gun or whatever, and he got shot to death. He didn't. There were no reports that he shot anybody. He didn't rob anybody. He was in the park by himself. You saw it. Everybody saw the video.
Yeah.
The cop rolled up and shot him instantly. No questions asked. So for me, I it's not just now an issue. For maybe the rest of the world, like I said, they got to that breaking point. Okay, you know what? This is more than enough. Like I said, this is not something that is new. This is not something that is, hey, he's a poster boy or person or anything like that. Is, hey, this person got killed on a live stream video, and we've had enough times of seeing this, and it's time to do something about it.
Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of people literally watched a man with life lose his life. He went from being alive to literally dying in front of the camera. People begging for these four officers to do something, and they did nothing. To me, that is evil on camera. That's evil on camera. I don't care what he did. That was taking a human life needlessly. And I think a lot of people saw that, and needed to see the evil, the callousness, the don't care attitude of those officers while this man slowly died, and for his mother, called for his mother.
Mm-hmm.
What does it somebody to call their mom, asking for their mom, a grown man? He was a big man. A grown man to call for his dead mother. So people watch this in horror. And I finally think a lot of people are like, we got to do something about this. We have to do something. This just can't go
So
on.
the way he died was,
More at it was.
the way he died was worse than seeing somebody shot. Essentially, is what you're saying.
I watched it.
Like you say, when Samir got shot in the park, when Trayvon got shot by the community guy, when the other guy got shot running down the street, it's different when, like I said, they use the phrase "I fear for my life" or whatever. This guy is on the ground in handcuffs, and you literally put your body and press your whole body in his neck for almost 9 minutes. You literally just strangled him to death.
Yeah, there was no struggle or anything.
There was no resistance. There was no struggling. He was not fighting back.
Yeah.
There was no cause for it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think it's more of the principle behind the matter now. Like I said, we've been seeing for years. You know what I'm saying? Cop shoots an unarmed black person. Cop shot this person. Cop shot the lady and broke into her house and shot her in her bed. That's like a normal thing now, and that's scary and beyond sad. That's normal. This was abnormal.
Right. Yeah.
And like I said, I think that's the difference why this particular case became a breaking point.
Yeah. You have anything to add, Jeff?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I think we've normalized a lot of really abnormal things over the last few years.
Yes.
I just want to take a step back real quick, Duane, and tell you that I appreciate the fact that you served this country. And beyond that, I want to say how sad it makes me that this country has failed you in living up to the opportunity, the promise of this country that you fought for. It's incredibly disappointing that we send people off to fight for ideals and we let them down when they come home. This is not something new. This, like you said, this has been going on for generations.
Yep.
But I think this country needs to be better than that. If we truly want to aspire to be what we think we are, we need to do better for all of our citizens.
I agree.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I named my company Doing Better Than Excellence. I agree. We have to do better. We have to. I work for the VA now, and I get the calls, and people they're stressed out and they're frustrated, and I'm like, I get it. Like I've been in your shoes. My family is full of military people. I get where you're coming from, and that's just what I understand. It is painful.
Yeah. Well, Rod and I have an ancestor who fought in the Revolutionary War.
That is.
We go back to 1635 on our mom's side in this new world. There's a lot of interesting history. It was something that I spent a lot of time on over the years and learned a lot of interesting things. But to answer Rod's question, I think what we've seen over the past probably 11 and a half years, maybe 12 years, is the pendulum swing in this country. We elected Barack Obama, which felt like an awakening in this country. It felt like, wow, maybe we've finally put this behind us. A man who spoke very eloquently about hope, who inspired people, who was able to, at least on the surface, bring people together. Certainly had challenges with blowback from the established Washington people. But I think that promise and that time period led to the pendulum swinging the other way. And what we saw was a lot of very dark things boil to the surface. It was it was sort of a license for every racist, every opportunist to piggyback on that event, on those 8 years. And that culminated in the election of our current president, who has really made no false pretenses about the fact that he is going to leverage every one of those things to his advantage. Again, this is not something new. This is going back to George Wallace, Nixon, and the Southern Strategy. The whole idea that we can take these ingrained feelings in people and leverage them to our advantage to win power and authority in this country. And I think what we've seen over the last 3.5 years is the people who don't understand that is a strategy. Okay, Donald Trump is a symptom of the fact that people can be manipulated like that. And what's happened, I think, over the last year or so, maybe not even that long, as more and more of these Events have been captured live on video. The outrage, not only in the Black community, but in society in general, the outrage has stepped up. And people who were silent before aren't willing to be silent anymore. Mm-hmm. So what was once a Black struggle is now an American struggle, a struggle against.
You see it worldwide
the use
now.
Of these
it's
things.
Right. It's a global structure.
It's a global.
Germany, Paris, everywhere. No, this is
right.
Enough is enough.
Right. No, that's very true. I think you're seeing all around the world, people have had enough. We still have a segment of our society, though, that views anything outside of the U.S. as not mattering. Okay, It's only about what happens here. And as you bring people to the realization that, you know what, it's no longer beneficial to think like that, they will start to agree on their own. I think the process has taken generations to get people to that point, but I think we've sped up that curve in the last few months. And you know, unfortunately, a lot of these events that have happened, George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, are the catalyst to change people's minds and to move them beyond complacency.
Yeah, I agree. Folks, we're going to take one short break to thank both of our sponsors, Skippin' Stones, the shop at Etsy.com, 25% off Father's Day items through Father's Day, and TshirtHooligan.com. Check out the new designs Just Pruitt and Running Back Legacy. And we have exciting news. This is the show. We are giving away the free t-shirt on this show. So if you listen to the show, you're eligible. All you have to do is DM me on Twitter. The word is unity. So DM that to @CleeRodB. Or if you're listening on The Grueling Truth, you can send me an email, rod.bloom@gmail.com, and we will take entries for a week, and then we will draw for a free t-shirt of your choice. Good luck. So guys, let's talk about something that's not easy, and that's trying to get to solutions or reform. And there are several topics within this. Okay, first of all, I have to lead off with this because I want to know what you guys think of this. Again, this is something that I just saw in the news. My wife, Kristen, mentioned this to me, so I thought we would talk about this. There's a push to erase parts of history now and to rename a lot of things. Okay, and a lot of things that people want to rename are things that are named after Civil War generals of the South and stuff, and I have no problem with that, guys. It was dumb to name these things after Civil War, or after people of the Confederacy. Anyways, they weren't a part of the United States. So I 100% agree with that. Some of the things I hear seem to be silly to me, but I want to get your thoughts on things across the board. And unfortunately, I don't have a bunch of examples, but to me, the thing that seems absurd is that people want to almost erase and forget about a portion of history like it never happened. And I get the feeling that 50, 100, 200 years down the road, they're going to be scurrying to go back and rewrite that, to put that back in, to say, hey, this actually happened. We need to learn from it. Okay, so the thing I'm talking about is that whoever the parent company is, they've decided to scrap the Aunt Jemima, the syrup bottle.
Yeah, I saw
Okay,
that.
yeah. So my wife comes in and says, she goes, they're getting rid of Aunt Jemima. She goes, I grew up with that. She goes, that's my favorite syrup. And she goes, it was just syrup to me. I didn't. She goes, and this is my wife. Okay, this isn't everybody. She goes, I didn't know she was black. So, you know, I mean, and then she goes, Mrs. Butterworth, is she black too? I said, I
Hmm.
don't know. I mean, we don't think about that. Okay, guys. So you tell me, where do you draw the line? Do you see, are all these symbols racist? Um, or are there things out there that are a part of your heritage that you want to continue? And what's going too far in trying to just get rid of everything, that happened in the past 100 or 200 years?
I I agree. Some of the stuff is just people trying to fit in. They were like that Me Too movement. Everybody just trying to fit in, like Band-Aids making a Band-Aid to match the skin tone. Like you said, getting rid of ancient mama syrup. If you get rid of ancient mama syrup, you might as well get rid of Uncle Ben's rice and cream of wheat cereal. And it's just like I said, it's just some stuff is just being silly.
Yeah,
Uh,
can you not sell any product that has a person of color on the label? I mean, that's
right,
kind of being racist too if you're saying, "Oh, we can't
Well,
do this anymore."
right. You know
well,
what I'm
you
saying?
know,
So it's like it's weird. Like I said, people are just trying to fit in.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing this, and we're not racist. We're going to do this. Some, I, this is just my opinion because I've seen it happen. Some people do things in order to say to try to prove it. Some people say stuff like you hear on movies or you hear on comics say, well, I'm not racist. I have a black friend. That doesn't make you racist or not because you have black friends. That that doesn't mean it. You know what I'm saying? Like you just trying to you try to prove a point.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, if that conversation with Colin Kaepernick kind of came out, 4 years ago, we say no, this is the reason why he's doing it. We wouldn't have the conversation about Colin Kaepernick now. It wouldn't have been an issue because it would have came out then. Hey, this is why he's doing it. Okay, maybe we should look at this issue. But now because everything is really an issue versus him just getting blackballed, now it's more of a we need to really, really pay attention to this because it wasn't just him that did it.
Hmm.
Yes, he might have been the face of or the person that started doing it, but a couple of his teammates, a couple of other players on other teams, stuff like that, followed his lead because it was a point of something that had to be done.
Yeah.
Hey,
right. Okay.
Rod.
Go ahead, Slim.
No, go,
Yeah.
go ahead, Slim.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm kind of towing a line on this because one thing I understand, it's a brand, and everybody's grown up with the brand and stuff like that. But also, for years and years and years, African Americans have tried to change that, that label and Jemima.
Okay.
Um, uh, it's I actually went on Twitter today and because people were talking about this same subject and I of course agree with you on the statues and stuff. I don't think they should be destroyed. They should be put. People feel that by taking them down, you're erasing history. General Lee is always going to be there. You know, these generals are always going to be taught in history books and stuff. It's
Hmm.
just that it's different. I'll give an example. A friend of mine I went to school, college with here in Colorado Springs. He went on Facebook one day and talked about the tearing down of the General Lee statue and how he had ancestors that fought during the Confederate, the Civil War, and how proud he is of that. And I said, that's good and dandy, but also remember those soldiers also held my ancestors as slaves. People really think that by tearing down these statues that they're erasing the history. It's not erasing the history. It's more people don't understand that a lot of these statues were built during the Jim Crow era, to intimidate and to put down blacks, especially in the South. That was the purpose, that was the purpose of them building the statues, was kind of a slap in the face to African Americans. I just think that they shouldn't be destroyed. I think they should be put in a museum because it needs to be taught. History doesn't need to be erased. I just think there's a place where it should be taught, that in a statue in the middle of a park, because when I walk by it, it doesn't remind me of the great general. It reminds me of a great general that took care of slaves, that held slaves, that wanted to fight for slaves. So,
right.
Going back to the Aunt Jemima, it's, I understand where you're coming from, Rod, where your wife. I think that's great. I grew up, people don't, but there was a history.
You know what? If it's something that's offensive, then I don't have an issue, with it going away. My thought is I hate to see stuff, change just out of a knee-jerk reaction because we might be offending somebody.
Right.
That's my thought. But if it's truly offensive, then then sure, it should be taken off the shelves.
I think it's more the history behind the Aunt Jemima, how it first started. I think, how it started and the reason with the mammy culture, the Gone with the Wind and mammy and stuff like that. I think that's, the reason why, because of the, the past history. But like you said, you got to be careful with the knee-jerk reaction as well, too, because you can't just turn around and take everything, Yeah,
I know the lady who was the what do I want to say, who was Aunt Jemima first back in the late 1800s, who was the model or the person for Aunt Jemima. She came from the minstrel shows, and I know that's a very racist arena. So I know the history of it.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. It's a touchy subject, and it's going to be very interesting to see what other things are going to transpire because of this. Like you said, you don't want America to be too knee-jerk about everything, Yeah,
I agree. But yeah, I think if stuff is truly offensive and not just offending one person, because let's face it, guys, there's going to be something that offends everybody. I mean, or there's going to be, you can pick something out and there's going to be one person offended by
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, Steelers are offensive. Let's get rid of them. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, you just hope
everybody. That's not the point.
You hope it's done right. So, let's move on. I know I didn't give you time to talk there, Jeff, but I want to talk about police reform. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. Police departments, people talking about abolishing police departments. What is really needed to reform police departments, and how do we best hold our officials and our police officers accountable while still giving them proper authority to be able to do their job properly? Let me add that last important word. And Jeff, I'll let you kick this one off.
All right. it's interesting. Both of these topics, Aunt Jemima, defund the police, I think are both terrific examples of gaslighting. What happens is people control the narrative to the point that, or the narrative is controlled to the point that people react to it in a way that is desirable to the person who's doing the gaslighting. So, for example, instead of seeing Colin Kaepernick kneeling as a protest against police brutality, the narrative becomes he's disrespecting the flag and the military. Aunt Jemima, as opposed to looking at that as the blatantly racist symbol that it is, the narrative becomes, oh, here's more political correctness. Okay. Defunding the police as a concept is not new. Again, police in England don't carry weapons. Around the world, there are different approaches to this topic. Only in America do we feel like ratcheting up the approach to policing and to military action makes us safer. We're the only place in the world that thinks we're safer because we can destroy the rest of the world 100 times over. And it's because we've all been convinced that the alternative is not something any of us can live with, or is it desirable. So when we talk about defunding the police, what we talk about is all of that money and all of those resources that go into locking up persons of color for the most minor offenses. Wouldn't it be better channeled toward positive life experiences and education for them? And we could send someone to Harvard for what it costs us to put them in prison for a year. So instead of looking at this as what's the negative impact on policing, let's look at this like, what would the positive impact be on society if we took a step back and said, okay, rather than finding ways to catch people doing something wrong, let's encourage them for doing something right.
Yeah. Duane?
Well said. Well said. Well said.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Duane?
So, defunding the police. Allow me to clarify my thoughts. Because somebody asked me about this the other day. I said, let me clarify what I think defunding the police should mean. Not mean get rid of the police and we should not have police. That is not what that means at all. Because I don't think that the world would be safe with a bunch of George Zimmerman walking around the streets. I don't think that's safe. Point two, I agree that the funding, some of the funding that they receive, should go to other people or other training programs or other avenues to affect more positive change. I heard a podcast or a thing from the leader of the Black Lives Movement. She was on with Trevor Noah, and she said that the point of the defunding police was to take some of the money that they get for arresting people for being homeless to buying shelters, for the homeless. That way, they get them off the street and they're not being arrested, put in jail, for being homeless. You're already in a bad situation. Why make it worse? Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Instead of, shooting somebody, who has a mental illness? Why not have a police negotiator there, or somebody with more training, to just talk the person off the ledge, versus say, well, let's instantly we got to shoot him or tase him because he's off his meds. That's what I mean. Like the not defund them, but the funding should go to other areas where it's more needed.
It's interesting, Duane, that we find a way to do that many times with white criminals.
That's mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was my point earlier. It is interesting how that works. Another thing I always talk about, matter is black or white, is with like child support. If I'm struggling trying to pay my child support, if I fall behind, I get arrested, I lose my license, I lose my job. How does that help me pay my child support? Just asking a question. I'm saying, like the funding for for stuff like that. Well, he got a benchmark because he didn't pay his child support. That's stupid. Now you got to pay court costs and go. That's wasting a lot of people's time and a lot of people, taxpayers' money for stuff that should be going somewhere else.
Yeah, then you fall further behind. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I say when I think of defunding the police, like the funds that are going to certain projects or certain avenues should be defunded and go to somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's hear what Slim has to say.
Okay,
because,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you with growing up with your dad and everything, I really want to hear what you have to say on this topic.
Yeah, definitely. I'm pro police. I got family that are cops. Of course, my father, rest his soul, was a cop, and I just want to expound on, what Jeff and Duane said. It's not about dismantling the police to me. It's about just taking those funds to do more stuff within the community. I want to see, community. The mayor of San Francisco just passed a law where, I don't know if you saw on Twitter, where the person in San Francisco was spray painting Black Lives Matter on his wall in front of his own home. And this couple thought he was just spray painting the wall. She said that she knows the neighbors, that she lived there, but she was lying. And she called the police. Well, the mayor of San Francisco just turned around and passed a law saying for calls like that, the police won't go there for those. They will send, another department, I guess, to handle those type of calls. It's stuff like that. I think it needs to be more so where you police the police. I think there needs to be more accountability. A job as a cop is a great, great responsibility, a great responsibility for the community. And I think when something bad like George Floyd happens, or Rayshard Brooks happens, or Eric Garner happens, that there should be that responsibility that's weighed in there on the decision, on reprimanding the cops. I saw on MSNBC the other night in Buffalo, there was a black woman officer. Her name is Carol Horn, and she was fired after stopping a white cop, fellow colleague, from choke holding suspect Neil Mack. Okay, she got released from the force, and she's trying to get her job back. And she's got a proposal that's going through in Buffalo. It's called Carriel's Law, and what it does, it's there's 4 points: mandatory statute on police bystander intervention. So if you're a cop, in that case with George Floyd, you better intervene, to de-escalate that situation, not just stand, there's a mandatory statute, for that, for police bystander intervention. There's protection from retaliation, from fellow colleagues or the union or whatever. External investigation with mandated reprimanding for abuse or misconduct, which definitely needs to be done, and required reportable registry. So hopefully that'll go through. I saw that he's trying to put it through there in Buffalo to make it law. So hopefully, that'll happen. And then you got things happening like, Breonna's law in Louisville where, you can't, there's no knock anymore. No knock warrants are banned. I wish that when Trump turned around and did his executive order, that he would have turned around and completely, made chokeholds illegal. He left everything up with Congress, and there are right steps. I'm going to give them credit. The GOP came out with something today, and there's going to be discussion on it. It's a great step on, getting things to where there's accountability for police, and you have to build trust. You got to build trust again in those communities. I would love to see once that trust is built for the policemen to turn around and try to recruit people from the neighborhoods,
Yeah.
Some type of program where they go back to those neighborhoods to show, hey, policemen are good. They have to get back that accountability again. And the funding or, how people are saying dismantling the police isn't going to do that. It's not going to do that. So I agree with Jeff and with Duane. I just think the funds need to be shifted towards other things.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. So let's kind of go a little bit deeper. Systemic racism and the overall economic disadvantages faced by African Americans in the U.S. We could go over 1,000 statistics. Okay, we know that this is a fact. Okay, that the whites, have pretty much an advantage everywhere. Okay, whether it's the pay for the same job, whether it's life expectancy, pretty much anything that you want to name. I had written down who's to blame. At this point, it really doesn't matter. I mean, this has been in place for years and years and years. How do we progress? How does this get better? How does the gap get narrowed? Duane, we'll let you go first on this one.
That's
I know it's a tough question. It's really tough. I mean, obviously, guys, if these were easy issues, they would have all been fixed a long time ago.
Right.
We've been going through this for years and years and years, and when I was even when I would think back to being in high school and stuff, and or school and learning about Martin Luther King, I never thought I'd have kids that are out of school and racism would still be an issue, but here we are.
Yeah. So how do we start the transformation of systemic racism, the redlining, and generational curses and all of that stuff? Like I said, there's so many different avenues and different ways to try to address this issue. But first, we're going to start with accountability of ourselves. Because it's not, for me, again, I grew up a little differently from everybody else. I grew up in a military family. I understand. I grew up also with my mom and my stepfather in a domestic violence relationship, so I understand a lot of different things from a lot of different perspectives. black or white. It really doesn't matter until we take accountability of ourselves. Because some stuff we can overcome. Because you can hear, a lot of different situations. You see a lot of different people. Like you mentioned Barack Obama earlier. There was nothing that held him back. It was his mindset that he wanted to be different. He grew up on the south side of Chicago in a rough neighborhood, but his parents was like, "Hey, no, you're going to go to school. You're going to get an education. You're going to learn how to do this. You're going to, do better. You're going to make change. You're going to do this." And he grew up. He wanted to do better. So some of the blame is on us because again, we have to want to do better. It's not always. We have to stop one. Let's say pointing the finger at other people. Well, I can't get this done because the white man held me down. Oh, this person hold me back. No, not necessarily. Because I with my job and my disability and my degrees and stuff like that, I make almost $100,000 a year. I work my hind parts off to get to where I'm at. I don't let people hold me back. The only person who holds me back is me. I take accountability for myself. Most people will say that, well, I grew up in a rough neighborhood and I can't overcome this. First of all, you have a defeatist mindset when first thing you say is I can't. Can't is not a real word. It's no longer in a dictionary. But we've been taught for so many years to use that word, when it's time to get hard. Well, I can't do it. And just give up. That's one of the classes when I teach people is we teach people to think differently, not think outside the box. Because again, if you think outside the box, you still putting yourself in a box, somewhat of a block to stop you from getting to a certain point. Think differently. Realize that there is no box. Realize that there is no limit to the sky, so don't say stuff like the sky's the limit. There is no limit to the sky. Is there?
Can I just follow up on that, Rob?
Sure, go ahead.
I think that's admirable, Duane. I'm not a big believer in the bootstraps argument for this reason. The counter argument is, or the comparison is, if you don't want to get shot by a police officer, just don't do anything wrong. And the reality is that takes the systemic aspects of it out of play. Good for you that you've been able to do that with your life. But not everybody has the same opportunity. What do we do to fix this? Well, I think, yes, absolutely. A certain amount of it comes within the individual. But I also believe that there need to be strong incentives and laws in place to give people opportunity who would not get it otherwise. And I'll use the example of the Rooney Rule to kind of bring this back to football. Rod, I know that you've talked about the Rooney Rule in the past, and yeah, none of us want there to be a need for the Rooney Rule, but the reality is we still need it. And until opportunities truly are equal, those kinds of things are the counterbalance. So there needs to be affirmative action. There needs to be a realization by people that just because we give one person an opportunity doesn't mean we're taking an opportunity away from somebody else. Okay, just by placing or hiring somebody who would not get an opportunity otherwise, the dialogue becomes, well, we took that job away from so and so. That's not the case. We all get better by bringing everybody else up. All ships rise when we improve opportunity in this great melting pot that we live in. So, yeah, I believe absolutely it's based on individuals seizing opportunity, but I think as a society, we need to do a better job of making opportunity available.
Now that part I agree with. That's why I said the first part is we have to take accountability for ourselves, and like you said, the second part is there has to be opportunities that are made available. But like you said, people have to want to take those opportunities.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. And you need to get out and vote. Vote for those people that want to see that change.
Right.
I'm going to go, personally, I put it upon myself. I'm going to go out there and help push, for Biden. Push for change. Vote for those people that are going to help change, because systemic racism is there. The proof is with, the Department of Justice is investigating now the Minnesota Police Department, for civil rights violations. It's still there. You just got, we have to turn around and get to the polls and vote these people that see what we see and to make the change that we want. That's one of the only ways that things are going to get better is if we put those people in there to make those changes to where somebody, I hate to go back to the political, where Trump turned around and takes away a lot of what Obama did. For example, with the policing, he tried not to militarize the police. Trump took that away. Here we have these problems as well too. So we need to put right people in those positions to where we can see change and have our communities turn around and push those people for the change that's needed.
I would agree with that, Slim. Let me just add one thing. You need to educate not you personally, but each individual needs to educate themselves on every layer of representation, not just the guy sitting in the White House.
Right.
I guarantee you that if you walk down the street and ask 10 people who their congressional representative was, they would look at you. 9 of them would say, I have no idea.
Yep.
It's even worse at the state and local level. Okay, if you don't know who's representing you, you can't expect them to represent you.
That was the point I was getting ready to make. I'm glad you brought it up. Who says that you cannot go talk to your councilman or you can't go talk to your state representative? You elected them. You voted for them. You have that right. That's the whole point of them having an open door policy for you to go talk to them.
Right. Absolutely. I've had so many conversations over the years with people who, they want to talk to me about politics, but they don't even know what the 3 branches of government are. Okay. And that ends the conversation for me. I mean, look, we need to have these conversations. We need to be open and receptive to other thoughts and ideas, but please at least be educated enough that we can have somewhat of an intelligent conversation. Don't just spit back to me the things that you hear on some stupid news program.
Right.
Hey guys, we all want to see better race relations across the country. So how can we all as individuals, how can we all set a better example? And not just by our own actions, but how can we, help that to spread to other people?
Hey, what you're doing right now, Rod, perfect example. You didn't have, seriously, no, I'm dead serious. You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to talk about this.
It was important. It's
It
very
is.
important. So
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you. So you got to see the importance in it in order to be able to do it, and you're going to reach a lot of people through this. That's why at the beginning I thanked you and the That's What B Said podcast, the ladies there, Kevin, the voice of the land, Always Positive J, he's done a couple Zoom projects, David Big Play, people like Jenna, who has her own t-shirt, Beleza in Style. She turned around and is doing a BLM line where 25% is going to George Floyd and his family. Things like that,
Yeah.
Where they're taking action because you feel that it's important enough. You have to feel that it's important enough before you're able to turn around and do something like that. I know that there's people sitting back there and say, what should I do? The first thing you should do is talk about it, whether it's with your friends, is with your family. Sit down and talk to them about it. That's the only way that the subjects, even though it's uncomfortable as it is, that's the way where you're going to start to see the change, and where eventually I think now you're seeing the power of the people. The power of the people, unfortunately is because of these deaths, but you're now seeing the power of the people starting to help make changes or take steps towards changes. And that's how it works. It's need to know that the power of the people is a very strong ally. We're all in this together. We're all in this together to end racism. So it starts with conversation.
Yeah. Duane?
And to add on to that, once you have the conversation, and the next thing you need is unity. Everybody getting on the same page. We're all coming to an agreement. We either agree to or disagree, but we all going to come to a point where, like I said, we all are in agreement that this has to end. How we get to that point, to the end product of how to end it, we may disagree on, but the end goal is the same result. This has to end.
Sir, and
Like,
Jeff.
so communicating, and then we all unify.
Yes, sir. Jeff?
I agree with those guys. I mean, I just one final thought on how we start to communicate better with people. Number one, I don't think it's by calling people names. I don't think it's by attacking things that aren't relevant. I think you do it from a place of understanding what your own shortcomings have been, and trying to do a better job for yourself and set the example for everybody else in your life. And being willing to take that risk, and have that conversation with somebody who, may have had a completely different experience than you, good or bad, and being able to empathize with them before jumping to conclusions about the experiences and how that relates to the experiences in your life. Just because something doesn't impact you doesn't mean that somebody else isn't impacted by it, and be willing to listen to how it has impacted them.
Definitely. I have one closing point, and then we'll see if you guys have, I'll give you all a chance to make some closing remarks then after this. I think it's obvious that it's probably a fact. I don't have any stats. We're seeing a lot more, or I would just say that there are a lot more families now. You guys both talked, Duane and Slim, you both talked about that there's mixed race, that your families are mixed racially and so forth, and that I think that is something that's becoming more and more common, and there are a lot more people that are racial, mixed race. I want to know if that is something that is going to eventually help to eliminate racism as this becomes, more and more common, as throughout the country. And also want to know, can we all be Americans one day? I'm going to tell you guys, and I know that they do these government monitoring things. They do it on my job in the mortgage business, where you got to check what race you are, and everything. And the other countries all have blocks. You can say you're Asian Pacific Islander, or something like that. There's no block for American. There's African American, there's white, there's all these other ones. Do you think we'll have an American block one day, versus worrying about what color everybody is? So, Slim, why don't you lead us off on this?
Oh, that's a good question. That's very interesting. I feel that I'm an American already. Black American to me is a subset. I think we're a very diverse country, and I think we should praise our adversity. We should praise the Italian American side. We should praise the Black American. We should praise the Mexican American. I think that's what makes this country so beautiful. But as far as going with the like with the census and stuff like that, man, that's a great question. Because I'd like to say I'm American. I fly to other countries. I'm American. I don't say I'm Black American. I say I'm American. I'm from America.
Yeah. And you make a great point. I don't want anybody to forget their heritage. To me, it's troubling how people always want to divide us up as Americans. And I think there's times when you need to appreciate your heritage, and there's times when we just need to think of ourselves as Americans, that we're all, kind of trying to work on something together. That's all.
Right. And I, prime example, the Puerto Rican people are so proud of their country, with the flag and everything. It just showed so much pride. I see with Brazil, when I go to Brazil, Brazilians are just so prideful. It doesn't matter if you're a Black Brazilian or other heritage. You're Brazilian, and there's such a pride in the country. And I hope one day that we get to that point where, as one country, as we could say we're American. It's going to take a while. This is right now what's happening is a fantastic start. It's a great start. It's just going to be a while before I think it gets to that point. And as far as mixed, you asked the question about mixed race. I think, I have mixed race, of course, in my family. And I have some that are totally Republican. I have some that are totally Democrat. That's just what I think. That's America. To me, that's America. We have our great discussions, of course. It just depends on how your upbringing, what your upbringing is, has a big part to do with that.
Yeah. So what do you think, Jeff? What are your thoughts?
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay. Thought we lost you. Thought you fell asleep.
No, I'm right there. Look, what I mentioned before, on our mom's side, our ancestors came to America in 1635. On our dad's side, it was around the turn of the 20th century, late 19th century. We are English, we're German, we're probably a few other things sprinkled in, but we are about as white can be, and we're enough generations into this country that we can check the box American, I think, at this point, because we really don't identify with anything else. I certainly don't think of myself as having any German traditions, or anything along those lines, and on the other side, again, we were English, so for us, I would think it's a pretty straightforward question, but the reality is that every people that have come to this country have had some resistance from the people who were already here. The Italians who came were viewed as lazy, and the Irish were viewed as drunks. Yeah. And everybody had some opinion of people who were different, but that's really what makes us so unique in the world, is that we don't have aside from Native American, which we basically stole this country from, there aren't any real Americans. We're all something. So, and melting us all together is what has made us great, but it's also what has defined this struggle. Now, of course, there's the huge difference that African Americans didn't come here by choice. So, that kind of separates them as a subgroup. But I think realistically, that will always be a part of who we are as a country. Good, bad, or indifferent, there will always be somebody that we single out. We haven't talked about the LGBTQ community. We haven't talked about women. There are so many ways that we are biased, are prejudiced, and are repressive against different peoples, that I just think it's woven into our fabric. And there's probably a better chance that we will destroy humanity at some point in the not too distant future than that we will all of a sudden all become alike enough that we don't see these differences anymore. So we better figure out how to coexist with these differences and stop being our own worst enemies by aligning ourselves with people who will use that against us to stay in power. So let's stop listening to the dog whistle politics, and let's start holding our representatives responsible and accountable, and make them deliver on that American dream that we talked about before.
And Duane, what are your thoughts?
I was deep in thought. I was taking me there. Yeah, I was thinking about a whole lot of stuff that you said. You made a lot of valid points on a lot of different things. Well, so let's start from the beginning question. When you said when we check the boxes on like the census and on tests and stuff like that since forever, is I don't know if it's just me, but has anybody ever noticed that after all of these years, as you pointed out, it's still on there that says black, white, then it says Asian, Asian Pacific, Hispanic, whatever. We're the only ones that are still called by a color, not by a race. I just find that very interesting. So, when you ask the point, like, when will we be just called Americans, or when we just get to the point, or will we just become as people, as human? Like you said, it may take a long while because there's a lot of things that have to get fixed first. Then you brought up another point of, like I said, we've been in this country for so long. Well, listen, we started off, eons ago, and when people look at, like, I'll just say for me, for my heritage, when people look at me, they see the outside version of the color of my skin, and instantly he's black. He's African American. No, my mom's side of the family is Indian. My dad's side of the family is from Jamaica. So at no part am I African American. I was born in America, so yeah, that makes me American. But at no point have I ever been from Africa. So I don't consider myself an African American because I've been to Africa once, but my family was born and raised here in America. I would consider myself more an Indian or a Pacific Islander than Black American or African American. But because, like I said, because of like you said, people how they prejudge and they instantly they see the color of your skin, they instantly categorize you or subdivision and say, well, you fit over here with these people, or you fit over here with these people. I said because people look at you, you see the color of your skin. Well, he's just white. Well, no, you're Irish and German and English and a whole bunch of other stuff. You see what I'm saying? Because from generations of like I said, being mixed races, and this person fell in love with this person fell in love with this person, and they had a kid. Now this person is mixed, and now this mixed person had a baby with another mixed person. So like I said, now we like 10, 20 generations in. How can you say that we're just this race or that race? Yeah, so we're at the point where we should. I'm agreeing with you. We should just be called, and we're just Americans. Period. We shouldn't keep dividing ourselves into this subcategory or that subcategory, because how can you define a person just by looking at them?
Yeah, you're right. And I worked with a guy for quite a while who was from Jamaica, and he had people call, or not call him, but suggested he was African American all the time, and he wasn't offended by it. He just kind of laughed about it. But it's like, he goes like, I'm not. He goes, I'm from Jamaica. He's just, it was ridiculous. He's like, it's not who I am. So, and he even had a little bit of a Jamaican accent, a little bit, kind of worn off, but yeah. So,
Right.
Yeah, people definitely judge. So I didn't mean to interrupt. Did you have anything else to add there, Duane?
No.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and go.
Okay, then let's say I want to give you guys each just a chance to have some closing words. So Slim, why don't you lead us off? We really appreciate you coming on and talking. It's been fun, and I want to have you back when we talk more football.
Oh, okay, yeah, definitely,
So,
yes.
I know everybody's following you on Twitter already, but what's your handle? Is it just at Slimdog?
Oh yeah, it's just at Slimdog.
Slimdog. So, okay.
Yes, it is. Yes. Hey, I want to thank you, Rod, Brown's Blitz. Great show. I've listened to your other shows, and I just want to let you know, while we were here doing this discussion, I was drinking my 22-ounce Guinness Extra Stout, just to let you know. Usually you begin with the beer.
We do. We decided not to.
Yeah,
And I asked
yeah,
Jeff. Jeff had a beer before the show. I did not, and I'm like, yeah, I guess I should have asked you guys. We could have talked beer, but
See,
we'll do it.
exactly.
We'll do it next time.
Yeah,
We'll do
that's
it
right.
next.
That tells you that I listen. I had my beer. I wouldn't, I hadn't drank in about 2 months. So, and I turn around and just for this occasion, I got the Guinness Extra Stout 22 ounce. So, yes, I just want to let you know that. But I really want to thank you. You're definitely making a change out there with this.
Thanks, son.
I appreciate what you do, and I can't wait to see you again. So we, get together, share beers, talk about Browns, and you're definitely making a change. You're doing more than what you know that you're doing. This is how things start. Maybe from this somebody else will turn around and decide to do a podcast on it now, and see the conversation that we had. So I just want to thank you again for inviting me. I was a little nervous coming on here, but these 2 hours have gone by super fast, and we didn't even swap, personal stories. If we would have swapped that, it'd have been another couple hours for that.
This has been my longest podcast, but but it's been well worth a while.
Yeah, it definitely. And if you ever decide to do something else again, after we see how things go, feel free to let me know. I'll be more than honored to come on. But also, I want to thank you, Jeff. Just some great insight. Gave me a lot of things to think about and mull about. And also, you, Duane, thank you, and keep teaching. Keep teaching them out there. You're doing a great thing. I just wish you all the best, and hopefully, we can all together we can make a change in America, and hopefully we'll see how things go over these next few weeks.
All right, thanks a lot, son. Duane, why don't you give us some words of wisdom or whatever you'd like to share?
All right, final words of wisdom. First things first, like again, I do appreciate you guys. Like I said, it's always a very educational, very enlightening experience. Talking to you, Rod. Like I told you before we started talking about doing a podcast, I said I enjoy having these talks, to be able to, like I said, to start these conversations and be able to, air things out between the people of different backgrounds. Because this, like you said, this is how we make change. We have to get, each other's perspective, without, the news media and like so, as some always saying, over a beer, and we're just sitting back, just talking, hey, this is how we, this is how I feel like to fix it, or this is how, my opinion on this. And we, everybody, is in agreement, even if on some part that we had different perspectives or disagreed on it, it wasn't a big argument. It was, hey, I disagree with, but this is why. And we're okay with that because we can have that conversation. But like I said, that's how we make change. It's starting that conversation. So again, I appreciate all of you guys taking your time out. You could have been anywhere doing anything else. So I appreciate you guys, listening to me, being on the call, Rod, Jeff, and I know it's probably your bedtime and stuff. That's what Rod said. I didn't say that. But, I appreciate you guys, like they're taking your time out and having an open conversation. Like I said, I look forward to getting other conversations, and hopefully, like to come in about 3 months, we actually have some football to talk about. So
that's right.
And unless all this other stuff, this other chaos and nonsense and foolishness in the world goes away.
That's right. And Duane, I didn't give you a chance to give your Twitter handle. I know it's something real fancy, and I can't remember it. I'm gonna let you get that.
It's DB Excellence. It's that DB Excellence.
DB Excellence. All right.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Duane. It's been a pleasure. Jeff, why don't you close this out here.
All right. Slim and Duane, it's been an honor and a privilege spending the last 2 hours with you guys. I appreciate you indulging me on my soapbox. Can you tell that I was a political science major at Kent State?
Oh, no doubt. I was going to say you should run for office.
Yeah, I didn't even get started on May 4th, 1970. There's so many other ways we could go with this whole conversation, but
So many ways to go.
this has been great. Again, I want to acknowledge that my brother is outside his comfort zone on this, and what a big deal that was for him to do this. So I really appreciate the fact that we did this tonight. I hope it's a good start for some other conversations that we can have in person, on Twitter, wherever. I would just like to throw out a challenge to all of you guys. I mean, I know you have a ton of followers on Twitter. Let's come up with a way that when we all see each other, which I hope will be at Top Dog Tailgate or one of the games, when we all see each other, there can be a way that we can all identify our solidarity, whether it's the ball cap or, a button or whatever it is. I would like us all to come together as Browns fans, and more importantly, as friends, to show that we have had these conversations, we care about each other, and we want to spread that message to others. So thanks for having me.
I think we can come up with something like that. So we'll definitely work on that, Jeff. Yeah, we will find a way, something fitting, something that'll work and be a positive symbol. So we'll do that. So I want to thank all three of you guys. It's like Jeff said, a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but you have to grow, guys. You have to learn, and I haven't always the initial stages with Colin Kaepernick. I didn't interpret things right. I was on the side of thinking that he was disparaging the flag. I didn't understand. So I've learned. That's obviously something we really didn't even get into that much tonight, but I understand how important this issue is. So it was a discussion that I really, really wanted to have, and I'm glad that we were able to all come together and have this, and hopefully this will have some impact on some people, even if it doesn't change the world. Hopefully, like you guys pretty much all said, hopefully it'll get conversations started that haven't been started yet, and maybe we can get this thing rolling. So I thank all you guys, and this has been the Browns Blitz. We will catch you next time.